ladies and gentlemen, Hal Roach presents for your entertainment and approval his Rascals. In their latest Our Gang comedy, we thank you.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. We hope you like our show. Hello, hello, hello.
There's an unusual relic of childhood. Actually, that's the child I left behind when nature decided I should begin to grow up, something that happens to us all. Most of us look back with fondness on our childhood, and we call on the kid that remains in ourselves to enjoy those memories. Nowhere can the celebration of childhood be found more entertainingly than on December 25th of any given year, and in a film series that began in the early silent days, survived the Great Depression, and finally ended with the second war to end all wars. It was called Our Gang. When the series hit television in the 50s, the name was changed for legal reasons to the Little Rascals. But the success of Our Gang can be directly linked with the innocence of children. There were many changes over the 2 decades those films were made, in faces and atmosphere, but throughout, the stories relied on kids being kids. And when that notion became less important, the series slowly came to an end. But the celebration isn't over. Not for us, nor the one-time kids who made up the various eras of Our Gang, many of whom are with us tonight. I'm Bob Lang, here to reacquaint you with those little rascals who made up Our Gang.
Nice fella.
Thanks a lot. One afternoon back in 1921, Hal Roach, who for 7 years had been producing silent slapstick comedies, found himself staring out his office window at a group of kids in a lumber yard arguing over some sticks. Now, he'd seen kids before, obviously. He'd worked with child actors. But these were not trained children. These were real kids doing what kids normally do, rather than what grown-ups think they ought to do. And Roach stood there and watched them intently for a full 15 minutes before he realized what he was doing. Then he thought if he could get a group of these natural kids together to make some film showing the child's view of life, maybe he could make a dozen before the idea was finally worn out. In just over 21 years, 220 short subjects and a feature were produced. That's more films than in any other movie series. And Roach produced 169 of them. Not bad for staring out the window.
Hal Roach, the man who created Our Gang. At 90, he explained simply what it took to be in the gang.
What we looked for was kids that really knew how to act, natural actors. And if they were natural actors, they were in the gang.
The first film in the series was made in 1922 and was called Our Gang, hence the series name. It no longer exists. The Our Gang films were also known as Hal Roach's Rascals, a name which would mean more 3 decades later. They were kids and animals pictures and featured an unusual array of moppets in various sizes, colors, and personalities. Ernie Morrison was the first member of the gang. He was the first black child in cinema history. And he was known as Sunshine Sammy even before he joined the gang.
My father didn't take me. He took the neighbor's child. Now, the baby didn't have to do anything but not cry. So they couldn't get anything out of the kid because as soon as he hear that camera whirring, he'd look up and, he used to raise the story. So somebody said, look, Joseph, said, don't you have a kid? He said, yeah. He said, well, bring your guy out here. He can't be no worse than this one. So they took me. I was just the opposite. Inquisitive, the big eyes, and wanting to know what was going on, looking up, smiling, and they got what they wanted. So one of the guys around said, Joe said, we ought to call him Sunshine. He said he hadn't bothered about crying and he even thought about crying. You ought to call him Sunshine. My father got home that night and he said, Sunshine. And he took Sunshine and he put Sammy behind it and got his copyright.
This early group also included Jackie Davis, later the first tough kid, Little Joe Cobb, the original fat kid, freckle-faced Mickey Daniels, who would emerge as leader, and Jackie Condon with the tousled hair. All the kids would be encouraged to let their hair grow long in portraying tattered street kids, making do with what they found around them. Sunshine Sammy's baby brother was Little Farina, Alan Hoskins, who appeared in 105 of the films, more than anyone else in the series. He was discovered by Ernie Morrison and his father, joined the gang at 2 years of age, and was called one of the gang's finest natural actors by Hal Roach. When Ernie outgrew Sunshine Sammy and the gang, he was replaced by Eugene Jackson.
So then they said they're looking for a little boy to take Sunshine Sammy's place at Hal Roach, to be Farina's big brother. So then we went down there for the interview. Now my hair those days, my character was when I would get scared, right? And my hair would go up, right? And that was a big idea, you know, the hair, long hair, and my hair was real coarse, and you could just comb it, and that's why I wore my hair those days, you know?
Yeah. What happened?
What happened? Yeah, what happened?
Tough kid Jackie Davis was pulled from the gang after only 2 years by his brother-in-law, Harold Lloyd, then a comedy star in his own series of Roach films, and sent to military school. But the most expressive personality and character most easily identified with was Mickey Daniels.
Mickey was one of the funniest freckle-faced, red-haired boys you will ever find, and believe me. Now, I don't say this because I knew him, but after leaving and looking at him, I realized just how funny he actually was.
Then there were the little girls, the leading ladies of our gang.
Gene Coleman, he was our still photographer, and a wonderful person he was. Then he brought his little daughter and put her in our gang, Mary Cornman. Mary worked. She was one of the originals. Now, her sister wasn't there at that time. She came later.
Peggy Ahern, eventually to replace Mary as leading lady, remembers both Cornman girls.
Well, you know, Mary was just before me, and of course Mildred I adored, was the baby, and anytime I could hold Mildred and play with Mildred, I just loved babies. So I would try to get Mildred every time that she was on the set. But Mary was older, and I had respect for Mary.
Bill Draper was assistant cameraman on the Roach lot, working with Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chase, and our gang. He also recalls younger sister Mildred.
She was very Dutch looking and very cute, very funny looking. And they wanted very badly to use her, but she found out as she cried, she didn't have to work. So she cried. And Bob would say that little so-and-so is crying Gene Corman out of $175 a week.